There's a lot of rhetoric around women taking so much alimony. What do you say to people who accuse women of being very greedy in this process?
It's easier and more juicy to label women. Men are not juicy enough.
Yeah.
You know?
On this episode of Ask the Expert, we have India's top divorce lawyer, advocate Vandana Shah, a woman who's probably seen more broken marriages than the Kardashian household combined.
I'm better looking than you. I may be a little older than you. I earn more than you. So if I was to marry you, what is the dowry you will give me? And you say, what?
She understands why marriages crumble and why some should have never started in the first place.
Number of cases which have come to me and they said, you know, ma'am, he came to fetch me in a BMW and then he turned out to be abusive.
In fact, she's been through it herself.
Black eye, but getting out of a BMW, sorry, boss, not for me.
So if you're single and you're wondering, should I even do this?
She's marrying you for love. You don't have to share your entire wealth portfolio with your wife.
And if you're married and secretly Googling, is this normal to happen in a marriage? This episode is for you. How much does it cost to get a divorce? So if there's no sex life, should they leave? Do you find that famous people have higher rates of infidelity? What are the more prominent causes of a marriage fragmenting?
I have not been asked these questions.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
One might wonder why we would feature a divorce lawyer for a matchmaking podcast. All we do all day is talk about happy, healthy, long-lasting marriages. So this, in theory, seems counterintuitive. At the same time, to understand why things work and how things work, it's imperative that we identify exactly where things can go wrong.
Absolutely. And not only what can go wrong, but also like the potential minefields. Although we are talking about divorce in India, but it is still a relatively new phenomenon.
Yeah.
There is still a lot of stigma attached to it, you know, and I like the reaction I get when I say this, what do you do? I said, I'm a divorce lawyer. Exactly. And then they're like, no, are you serious? No, I am very serious. I'm a divorce lawyer. And then I find them quickly checking my Insta and they're like, okay. And then I get this strange reaction. I'm really nice to my wife. I said, yeah, well, I'm not judging you. I've just come here for a get-together. You know?
Defensive हो जाती है.
Yeah, एकदम defensive. नहीं, मैं बहुत
Stay away from my marriage.
You know, exactly. You know?
But I don't think that we need to attach so much stigma as we do.
Yeah, but see, we are a pro-marriage country.
Right.
And we'll continue to be so.
Right.
And our courts are also not a pro-divorce court. We always talk about Supreme Court is very clear that, you know, marriage is sacrosanct. You know, it is not to be taken lightly. You know, I mean, like, for example, why are prenups illegal in India? Because as per our Supreme Court, we cannot have a contract in a marriage because a marriage is sacrosanct.
Yeah.
That is why a prenup is illegal in India. And for us in India, marriage is the ultimate destination. I mean, you see it financially, also see the industry. You know, we spent billions of dollars on marriages in
industry.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we have destination weddings and events and, you know, I mean, a marriage continues like for 15 days. It's not unheard of.
True. No, it's true. And I feel like we lionize the institution so much in this country, and that's great. I think it's very core to who we are as a people. You mentioned that prenups are not enforceable in India.
Correct.
Are there any legal protections or measures someone can take, even if they're very in love? Like, you just never know what's going to happen down the line. You don't know what happens when families, in-laws get involved.
So I'll give you a few examples from the man's point of view and the woman's point of view. For women, my first advice is work, have your own money, and, you know, keep that aside. Have a separate bank account. You know, always keep something away for a rainy day. Secondly, for women, you know, your husband is your husband. It is not necessary that your husband has to be everything. You know, you can have your friend circle. You don't have to tell him each and everything. How does it matter to my future husband whether I've got a 5-carat solitaire from my mother?
Yeah.
And how does it matter whether I'm wearing a knockoff or I'm not the same? Are these relevant issues? These don't make a marriage.
Business.
You know, yeah, exactly. And these don't make a marriage. marriage.
Interesting.
I mean, a marriage is built on so many things. You tell me you're in a matchmaking platform.
I know.
And for the husbands, the ones who have a lot of money, who are apprehensive, that what happens if tomorrow she comes into the house and things don't work out and then she doesn't leave, she may claim my house. So I've been advising people, I said that, just stay in a rented accommodation. She's marrying you for love. You don't have to share your entire wealth portfolio with your wife, and try and protect your business interests. There's recently been a very high profile case where the industrialist married to his wife eventually after over 2 decades together. The wife is part of the board of directors. So she can actually influence the share market. So your matrimonial has creeped into corporate governance.
Work life, right.
And it's happened in the past.
Wow.
So keep your 2 businesses aside.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in a situation where everything gets merged into one. Although a marriage is a union, but you can have a union with boundaries. It still works beautifully.
That's so interesting. How much does it cost to get a divorce?
It depends. There's no limit on what you can charge. I mean, if you go to like a mid-level lawyer, they may charge anywhere between 1 to 3 lakhs per year. If you come to an expensive or a high-profile lawyer, it can be anywhere between 7 to 9 lakhs a year for one case. So divorces are expensive, but so are alimonies. That's why choose your partner well.
Tell me more about alimony.
So alimonies are, in India, there's no fixed percentage. It's what you argue and what you negotiate. And like there was a case in which I got the wife 250 crores. Husband was claiming to be worth 500 crores. So, that was an expensive case. There was also another case in which the wife she caught her husband cheating with a DJ. And, because she kept on saying, ma'am, he was cheating with the DJ, DJ, so it was obviously, she couldn't digest that. And he was worth 40 crores. She walked off with 20. And she was 26, 27 years old, no children, so it just depends.
There's a lot of rhetoric around women taking so much alimony and, being very shrewd about it. Like, what do you say to people who accuse women of being very greedy in this process?
Why did they make laws? Why did they have socio-legal expectations from women's families to pay for the marriage? Ask the guy's family to pay.
Right.
No one objected to that. We did that for hundreds of thousands of years.
Dahej ka concept. Yeah.
I actually said this to someone and he said, ma'am, what's your opinion about this? I said, well, I'm better looking than you. I may be a little older than you. I earn more than you. So if I was to marry you, what is the dowry you will give me? And he said, what? I said, so when people talk about women misusing the law or, talk about women being shrewd, I just say, why did you have institutions like that?
Right.
For the longest of time, women never had to be a part of the inheritance.
Yeah.
So where did all this come from?
Right. Like, people say, laws are stacked against men in favor of women. But I would say, all of society is stacked in favor of men.
Absolutely.
The entire wedding marriage setup, it's the guy who's in control, right?
Absolutely.
From the wedding to the expenses to even the selection of the girl, men are in power.
Yeah. It's easier and more juicy to label women. No one wants to label the man. Men are not juicy enough.
Yeah.
So
divorce naturally is on the rise in India.
Absolutely.
For various reasons, largely the fact that it's become something accessible now to a lot of people. In your experience, what are the more prominent causes of a marriage fragmenting?
So, when we look at India, I'd like to give you context.
Please.
So you go to the family court to file for divorce.
Yeah.
So when I used to go 15 to 20 years ago, there were barely 15 to 20 what I call matters on board. Okay, matters, I'll translate it into cases. Okay, so you had 7 floors, 15 cases, 15 into 7. You do the math. Now today, when I go to the family court, sometimes there are 70 to 80 matters on board.
Oh my God.
On one floor. So 8 into 7, that's 560. So divorces are just happening in our country.
Yeah.
Even though we are a pro-marriage country, we are a country which believes in being together for 7 lifetimes, and all our conversations are centered around that. We've grown up hearing it. But divorces are on the rise. It has become part of our vocabulary. 15 years ago, 20
Wasn't
years
even a
ago,
concept.
in my mom's time, no one was even talking about that.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of people who are high profile, like we follow cricket, and we follow Bollywood, and a lot of people in both the spheres are going through divorces. So, these multiple people worshipping them as icons, they
And
say,
their marriages are
अगर उनका हो गया तो मेरा भी हो सकता है.
true. Yeah.
Earlier, it's not that marriages weren't bad or they were like this peachy and rosy and everybody was perfect. No. But no one spoke about it openly. You just kind of continued to live. There was always some Masi or Bua who you knew, I don't think she's with her husband, but no one discussed it. But now people discuss it. It's out in the public sphere. And there are a number of reasons. I mean, social media is one of the reasons for marriages splitting up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How so?
One are what I call as Insta marriages.
Sorry, that's so funny.
Yeah,
Insta
but,
marriages? Okay.
So you see each other on social media, you've not checked out and everything.
Yeah.
And you get married. And I had this girl who had come to me. Marriage went bust in 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And she said, ma'am, actually what he showed on social media was very different from what it was. I said, and did you expect it to be the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. Secondly, a change in our financial needs, our financial statuses.
Especially as women.
Especially with women, I mean, we've moved out of the so-called long suffering,
Dependent.
Yeah, dependent, sacrificing. You see the change even in our movies. Earlier, all the mothers in the movies were constantly crying, and only focused on the child and so on and so forth. Now you see working women in movies.
Yeah.
See how the arc has
True.
moved. Thirdly, this whole, I don't need to put up with this anymore. This whole that my life is too short, and especially post-COVID, the whole YOLO syndrome. You only live once. So that has impacted marriages. Because a lot of people are saying that I don't need to get married.
Right.
And they get married reluctantly and then it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a case where the guy was 100% sure he doesn't want to get married. And फिर भी कराया गया. And then when he came to me and he said his mother was there, his mother said, no, आप ma'am इसको advice करिए चलाए and all that. So I requested her to move out. And he started off and he said, ma'am, I don't want to get married. I don't know what I want to do. But marriage, I don't want to do. And I have been saying that from the beginning. They wrote it off. So this whole self-discovery and all of that has also led to this.
I want to understand, is that such a bad thing? Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. If people want more from their lives, if people strive to be truly happy and fulfilled in life, and they feel like a marriage ceases to serve that end, is it such a bad thing
to walk away?
Thing. Is it a failure, quote unquote?
No, see, even a broken marriage is not a failure.
Yeah.
It is just that part of your life hasn't worked out.
Yeah.
Divorce is so stigmatized because people always think, oh my God, you're getting divorced. What's going on?
Truly.
But it is not a failure of your entire persona. It is a subset of your life. Like people whose divorces are going on in perpetuity, they keep on coming back to court. And I've just recently had a case where that guy's matter is going on for 19 years. I said, what's wrong with you? She said, नहीं मैं फिर निकलता ही गया टाइम. I said, वो तो मुझे दिख रहा है. आपके केस में मुझे दिख रहा है कि टाइम निकलता गया.
So I wanted to follow up with the question that, have you ever had a couple come to you seeking divorce, even though they might still be very much in love?
So I've had 2 cases. One of them has had a happy ending. So this lady came to me and she was an actress. I could sense that, she still loved her husband because the things that her family was telling her to go for that, but the sister-in-law got this baby shower which was organized in a 5-star. When her baby shower happened, and when it was not this much, the sister-in-law was given an LV bag, she was not given one. So when the parents left, so I spoke with her and she said, ma'am, I don't really care. I mean, I'm just sad that, I really loved this guy. And now all these things have come in between. And even though we sent out the legal notice, but after that, they actually patched up.
They reconciled.
They had one kid, now they've had another kid.
Yeah.
And they're really happy.
And what's interesting is that sometimes when there's too many cooks in the kitchen,
Absolutely.
when too many relatives or like secondary, tertiary people get involved in your relationship, that can create friction or stress on a marriage where it otherwise didn't need to, right? Like whether it's the families, and in India, obviously, it's a marriage of two families, not two people, right? So
families and extended families.
Correct. So
and the staff. Your staff also has
an opinion.
View. Absolutely,
Yeah.
So even though this one, I get this, she's not nice to the cook also.
Right.
Even the cook said, nahi, bhabhi achhi nahi hai. I'm like, but how is the cook involved? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, so I think what I'm learning from this is that like when I'm evaluating prospective partners, to really think about the other stakeholders in their life, their family members, and how they could influence the dynamics of my relationship as well, right? Like I think that's something that maybe young people don't consider enough.
Yeah.
Like I love this guy, but like, would your family get along with his family? One hopes that there is a harmonious union. Right. So.
But you know what one can do, and I advise people to do that. Why don't you stay next to your in-laws, get a separate place, get to know each other as a married couple
first?
Yeah.
Test run, basically.
Test run in a good way.
Yeah.
Because marriage changes everything. Are you compatible as a married couple also, versus only compatible as a girlfriend boyfriend? If you can afford it financially, why not?
Yeah.
Give it a shot. It's worth it. You can stay in the same city, same block, do whatever, but at least you have a chance of establishing your own little family unit, which can then be a part of the larger family unit. You may get married and you may have a different way of setting up your home. Maybe you like minimalist and your mother-in-law likes a maximalist. So, rather than sort of feeling all like agitated about it.
Find a middle ground, maybe, or get a different place.
Yeah, when you're young, you want to do a lot of things.
Right.
So why not have that?
You mentioned public figures and celebrities, and I'm sure you have some exposure in that realm. And I'm just really curious, like, do you find that people in the public eye or famous people have higher rates of infidelity or non-monogamy? Do their marriages and relationships look different because they have so much access and so much power?
They have two different lives to look at. One is what they put out in the public, and one is what's going on at home. And somewhere I find a lot of them, become consumed by the public. So that becomes the persona. And when you carry that persona home, you're a human being after all. When you carry that persona home, it creates a lot of problem. Because you may be a superstar, but at home, you're just dad for your kids.
Right.
Or you're just a husband. And especially if you were not famous when you got married. So I think that is something that takes a lot of navigation. It really takes a toll on them. A lot of people are able to navigate it. A lot of them don't. But I still find in India, it's not that bad. And what I find in India is that people stick it out together. Even if their marriages are not, especially people in the public eye, and I know tons of them. Of course I won't share their names, but they stick it out together.
For the sake of like the image?
For the sake of their image. And a lot of times I know someone who was, again, that case was out in the public eye, and after making such a big hue and cry, the husband and wife have decided to patch up, because they also feel, okay, now we've known each other for like 20 years. Where are we going to go? So known devil better than unknown one, for both, not only for the wife, even for the husband, so it's that sort of a thing. I don't find them jumping in for a divorce as much as, let's say, someone in Hollywood.
So a lot of people in our audience are single and they're looking out to get married. What would you advise for them to look out for in prospects when they're meeting? Are there particular red flags they should be mindful of at the outset?
I mean, for the women, I always say, firstly, don't marry only for money. That cannot be your first criterion.
Okay.
When you're so impressed by a BMW or a Range Rover, you forget to look at, borrowing your term, red flags. Number of cases which have come to me and they said, ma'am, I did not realize, because when he came to fetch me, he came to fetch me in a BMW, and I thought, okay, and then he turned out to be abusive.
It's awful.
So, I mean, that is one thing that I say, okay, be impressed by a BMW. You cannot trade your life for that. That is one thing. And for men, I say, don't just look at a lady just because she's gorgeous. What lies beneath also is something you need to think. Whether you'll be able to have a conversation, have a communication. For me, it was very important to have a good sense of humor, because life takes you on its various
Twists and turns
and the roller coasters. So you need to be with someone who has a sense of humor. Money, of course, is important. A lot of people in India don't have a discussion about money before they get married.
Right.
Whether women will be allowed to work. And I'm using the term allowed with like these
massive air quotes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, will you be allowed to work? What is the marriage setup going to be like? Living situation,
kids.
Moving abroad, kids, and a bit of, if you both are working, what you're going to do, when there are kids, who's going to take a step back? So I just think all these things are what you need to look at.
Yeah.
And then follow your heart.
Ultimately, it is your gut. You have had such an intimate view of so many diverse marriages. Have you found that there are certain dynamics that work better than others?
Like, the marriages which are now lasting for 30, 35 years. So my categorization of those marriages is that they have learned to overlook a lot of small things. We tend to make, I always tell people are now coming to me for pre-marriage counseling, and I just tell people that, you need to think that if I don't have coffee from this cup 30 years hence, is it going to be a life-changing event?
Yeah.
Will I be fighting about it? Because a lot of smaller issues are the one which keep blowing up. Marriages which communicate are really good. I know someone who's married for 35 years and they've just consistently overlooked a lot of things which would be quite irritating otherwise, and which would, in today's day and age, it would like lead to a divorce. The wife doesn't like going out much. The husband really likes going out. And she's like, you carry on with your friends. I'm happy sitting at home.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing.
I think it's a case of picking your battles,
Yeah.
Like I've seen you answered this question, arranged marriage versus love marriage, in the past, right? But to what extent do you feel our parents or those who are arranging our marriages consider things that we are unable to because we lack objectivity?
See, but the rate of success and failure is the same in both. It's very difficult. That's a really good question, but it's like it has no real answer. I just think that if you want your marriage to work, you have to decide. Are you okay with a guy who's not doing so well but who loves you more? What is a non-negotiable? And then you have to think, it's just one life. Is it worth it?
Yeah.
However rich you are, but if you're just going to be subjected to emotional abuse or physical abuse or financial abuse, I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
So tell your people, choose your non-negotiables.
Yeah. Right. Draw that boundary.
What's
that
the
boundary line for you?
Yeah. Black eye, but getting out of a BMW, sorry, boss, not for me.
Never.
I'll come in a in a mobike.
True.
You know?
Like, I read a quote yesterday: marrying late never killed a woman, but marrying wrong has.
Absolutely.
You know? Alrighty, so just closing with a really fun, interesting segment where I will present a scenario. These are real life scenarios that happened and that we've taken out, and I want you to weigh in. Basically, should you stay or should you split?
Okay.
So he loves me in his own way. He pays the bills. He doesn't flirt with anyone else. He eats every meal I cook, but we haven't had a meaningful conversation in 3 years. I beg for emotional connection. He says, I'm just not expressive.
Sex life.
No sex life.
Leave.
Yeah. So if
Immediately. Come to me right now. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
So if there's no sex life, should they leave?
I mean, sex is a part of your marriage.
Yeah.
And with this entire scenario, I think you should call it quits.
Okay, next one. I caught my wife chatting with someone else online. Whenever I called her on it, she said that I knew I was talking to someone else too. We had been emotionally cheating on each other because we felt like we weren't getting what we needed from the marriage. Do you think there's scope for reconciliation?
Go to a marriage counselor.
You can still work it out.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. Emotional cheating? What do you think?
Go to a marriage counselor.
Yeah.
Because the next step will be physical.
Yeah.
So go to a marriage counselor before that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your next step will come. And then after that, you'll have to come to Vandana Shah, divorce lawyer. You know, so.
Okay, so there's a married couple. They were struggling to conceive, had 4 miscarriages in a row. Before our son was born, very much at the same time, her dad started needing care due to Parkinson's, passed away, and her mom into memory care due to dementia, Alzheimer's. This decade of misfortune has eroded our marriage completely. She's put an air mattress in the basement for herself, staying in the guest room.
Go to a counselor.
I think marriage can actually be so difficult when, you know, parents are falling sick. I think infertility
is a big deal. I know someone who's been married. She's had 9 failed IVF attempts.
That's so rough.
You know, and that marriage is just going to toast.
Yeah, puts a really big strain.
When she told me she's had 9, I just said, you know, you need to speak also to a counselor. She said, and I said, why don't you look at something else? You know, there's adoption and so many other this thing. And she said, no, you know, my husband is saying it has to be our own child. And I just, I mean,
at what cost? Like putting your body
at what
through
cost?
so
I mean,
much.
and you've got a mouth. Tell your husband, I can't do it anymore. 9 failed IVF is a lot of IVF.
Last scenario, which I'm curious about. So a couple gets married. One partner comes out as trans to the other, transitions to a new gender. But naturally that person whom they married is straight and is attracted to the opposite gender. So what does one do in that case?
Please leave.
Leave.
Immediately.
Yeah.
You know, like earlier there used to be a lot of closet gays who were forced to marry, and then that marriage never got consummated and it was just an unhappy marriage. You know, that's why I said that your sexual aspect is very, very important. You know, and people don't discuss that too much in India. Whereas I think we should, because we are a country of 1.4 billion people. So somewhere it is happening. That's why we are so many of us, you know.
Yeah.
But that's my take on it. Yeah.
If you could go back in time to a time before you were ever married and give your former self one piece of advice, what would you say to her?
I would tell myself, get married, be happy, always love yourself, and do what makes you happy.
So you would still advise her to get married in spite of what happened to you?
Yes, because I'm a big believer in positive and happy endings.
Great. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Advocate Vandana Shah.
Thank you so much.
We have learned a tremendous deal from you today, and we look forward to having you again soon one time.
Thank you very much, and I'm really happy, you know, with what you're doing, and I think your questions were fabulous.
Oh, thank you so much.
I have not been asked these questions.
Oh, good.
So, you know, thank you very much. I really enjoyed being here.
Thank you so much for watching another episode of Ask the Expert. If you enjoyed this video, do be sure to hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and leave in the comment section below what you want to know about divorce next time. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.